I'm going to talk about the effects and results of imperialism in the novel Heart of Darkness. Okay, so around 1898 was when Joseph Conrad started writing the novel, and this was a major time where European countries started imperializing and colonizing throughout the world, but mainly in Africa, and they were starting to fight over which parts they wanted to control. And so here we just have a picture of Spain, Portugal, Italy, Germany, Great Britain, Holland, Belgium, and France. So as you can tell right here, the Belgium ruler, King Leopold II, started taking control of this part of Africa, which we all know is the Congo, which is where the story is about in the novel. And he's taking control of this place, and he was a very strict ruler, and he was a major believer in that if a country can rule overseas, then the country can have much power, and it's a key to a country's success. So that's why he colonized overseas. And this started during 1898. This caused a strain in Africa because he was a harsh ruler, and he was mean to the natives. So he started colonizing, and he forced the natives into labor, and the natives weren't very appreciative of that, if you guys could say that, but they were hurt from it, and it started putting a strain on their country. So, expression of imperialism throughout the novel was different from various characters, but the expression of imperialism varies from different characters. And for Marlowe, it was different from Kurtz. Marlowe, he symbolizes kind of the positives of imperialism. He states in the novel that I had God in heavenly mission to civilize you, as he speaks to the natives. He thought that he was going to allow the natives to progress and advance, and he helped them, and he thought that he had good intentions of colonizing to them. But then later on in the novel, he expresses, I was an imposter. So he recognizes the fact that he invaded their country, but he still sticks to his moral values in the end, and he's just kind of symbolizes the positives of imperialism. So on the other hand, there's Kurtz, and he was really different from Marlowe in a way that he really didn't care about how he said he was colonizing. For instance, everyone that worked for the company, the men, they expressed what they did as trade, and they never said it was kind of a bad thing. They just talked about trade. You can tell throughout the novel it talked about trade this, trade that, and they never said anything kind of was bad about it. However, Kurtz, on the other hand, he says he takes the ivory. He forces them into doing this, and he never says that what he did was he had good intentions of doing this. So he's open about the fact that he does not trade, but rather he takes and forces the natives into doing this by force, and he describes his own treatment to the natives with words like extermination and suppression. So he really doesn't care that he expresses his views of imperialism, that he just does it by force, and he does not hide the fact that he rules civilization through violence. So, some of the results of imperialism, I believe, were waste and carelessness. Marlowe's steamship, as you can tell right here, had sunk, and he had to wait 3 months for it to be rebuilt. And waste and carelessness, as you can see, was the steamship had sunk due to careless driving. And everywhere that Marlowe sees and talks about, he says there's greed and suspicion and paranoia, and people are constantly looking for wealth, and they're desperate for the company's approval. That's all they think about, and that's a major result of imperialism all throughout the novel. And it is clear that, I guess you could say, there's a corporate frenzy, which results in inefficiency, such as the steamship being sunk and stuff like that. Okay, so major physical results of imperialism. As you can tell right here in the picture, there are Congo natives, and they seem like they don't have enough nutrition, and they talk about in the novel how like natives were poorly treated, and they talk about their physical appearance. You can tell that cruelty and inhumanity and degradation brought from imperialism, which caused natives to be, I guess you could say, not healthy, and they were rotting. Marla talks about how they were rotting piles on the rivers, and that shows that Africans were discarded after they could not be used anymore. So the Europeans didn't really care about them anymore, so they were just kind of left there. So physical result of imperialism would be, I guess, just kind of like a return to slavery, I guess you would say, as well. Okay, so psychological results of imperialism are also plain to see. Just like physical results of imperialism, it's also psychological results are easy to see in the novel. Europeans are stated to be morally hollow, and as you can tell, that the civilization, I guess you would say, is thin, and it's kind of like machinery. It's it doesn't really, it doesn't travel well. It's not very, it's not very productive, I guess you would say. And a major result of psychological result is hypocrisy, which means that like it's pretending to have moral values and beliefs and thoughts. However, in actuality, it does not. And so I guess you'd say that insanity is a major physical result of imperialism. So speaking of insanity, which is said in the novel that there's like rage and frenzy and madness going on. Kurtz, he says, I've seen horrors that you've seen. But you have no right to call me a murderer. You have a right to kill me. You have a right to do that, but you have no right to judge me. It's impossible for words to describe what is necessary to those who do not know what horror means. Kurtz, who has no authority to whom he answers but himself. So constantly he's asking himself questions and he's answering his own questions. So he has no authority to but himself. And this is, none of the men in the novel can handle this except Kurtz. So Kurtz, as everyone knows, he dies in the end. So insanity leads to his death and a man's downfall. And so imperialism affects psychological issues, and then psychological issues leads to insanity, and then insanity leads to someone's downfall in the end. So it leads to a man's downfall instead of just being linked to, say, absolute power or something. Okay, so the final results are seen in the novel about imperialism are on Marlowe, and as you can tell right here, this is Marlowe on his boat, the Nellie. And this is where kind of like the last things you see about imperialism. And I guess you'd say Marlowe is compelled to tell his story to the natives, and he kind of has this stance of excellence, and which is kind of a result of imperialism. And like the rest of the men, they're at home in Europe, they have financial results as in gain from imperialism, but they don't get their hands dirty. Unlike Marlowe, he actually has, he experiences it firsthand, and which allows Marlowe to be, he kind of makes the men on the boat make them feel like they are morally permissible and required to listen to his story about imperialism. So, yeah. Okay, so he is compelled to tell a story about imperialism, and he experiences firsthand, which is important because no one else does. And he's the last that is the last result we see of imperialism in the novel.